Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're all about identifying plants. I saw a few plants here that are invasive, so we'll talk about those. And I actually had a tree expert here this morning because there are a few trees here that produce nuts, and I wasn't sure if one or two of them were actually black walnut trees. I have black labs. That could be a big concern because they eat everything. And not to mention the juglone toxin that's in the tree also inhibits some plants from growing, and as a gardener we don't want that either. I didn't think there was when we bought the property, but now that I'm seeing nuts on the ground I got a little worried. So I had a tree expert out here who was much better at identifying the tree than me, and so we're doing that. And I also want to show you guys where I'm going to be putting the new cottage garden. There isn't a cottage garden here. There are some Asian influenced or Japanese type gardens. There's a beautiful formal garden with some pretty architecture, and there's another spot that I think would be perfect for a cottage garden. It looks like the former homeowners started with some plantings there, but I'm gonna add some more and I'm gonna show you some things that I'm gonna be planting. So when we first started looking for homes, and we were casually looking, this was like before the move, we did find a house that was beautiful. It was another old farmhouse. It had, I think it was, I don't know, 10 acres, but it had a couple black walnut trees, and that was a big concern for us because number one, where those trees were located on the property is where I wanted to grow gardens, and number two, they were all very close to the house. We have dogs, and like I said earlier, they eat everything, so I didn't want to take any chances. The trees are beautiful. They're gorgeous. The wood is amazing, and from what I understand, the walnuts are supposedly very good, but I don't particularly want them on my property. So when we were looking for this house, one of the things we were trying not to buy is a home with black walnuts on the property. And I didn't think this one did, but when I was walking around out here the other day, I saw a bunch of nuts on the ground, and then my mind just started going. I don't know if that happens to you too. Let me know in the comments if it does. But my mind just started going, and I was like, oh my goodness, what if it's black walnut? What if the dogs eat it? I need to get out there and start cleaning up. And lo and behold, to make a long story short, I had the tree guy out here this morning who helped me properly identify them as hickories. I think they're pignut hickories. So that's much better than black walnut. And I'm gonna show you the nuts so that you can see what they look like. And I'll pop a picture up here of black walnut and kind of show you what that looks like and why there was a little bit of confusion. But walk the entire property. Happy to report there's no black walnuts. We've got a lot of white oaks, red oaks, lots of tulip trees, some honey locusts, and a couple flowering crab apples. I've got hemlock and some other cool things. Some things I had already identified, and some things I wasn't sure what they were. So it was great having the tree expert out here. And another reason why it's usually good to get a tree expert is because they're trained in trees. And especially where I live right now, if you have ash trees with the emerald ash borer that are just decimating trees, you know, people are just taking ash trees down left and right, some of which are already dead, but others, you know, you may still have a chance to save, and a tree expert, I should say, might be able to help you save those trees by treating them before it's too late. So this here is one of the trees that I was questioning whether it was a black walnut. I found all of these little nuts here. Look at these, and they're all over the ground. And because I wasn't sure what kind of tree it was, I started putting it in, you know, those plant identifier apps. And this one actually was coming up as a pignut hickory, but the other one, which is over there, was coming up as black walnut. So I was getting a little worried. And so I'm really glad I called the tree expert because he definitely allayed my fears. So this is the tree that I really started questioning yesterday. I was a little concerned that this one was a black walnut, and turns out it's also a hickory. He thought pignut also. Let me show you some of the nuts when I was taking photos of them, again, now this one kind of looks like the other one, but I mean, he was mentioning that the black walnuts are a little bit bigger. So I feel pretty good. I'm glad I talked to him about this tree because now I don't feel like my dogs are in any kind of danger, and I'll still be able to grow things in this area. With black walnuts and the toxin that it releases, juglone, there's certain plants that you can't grow. I know there's like berries and certain types of berries and apples and stuff. And not that I know, I mean, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be planting out here, but I certainly don't want to be limited in what I'm planting because of a tree, because apparently the toxins are not only in the tree, they're in the roots, they're in the nuts, and they extend to like the outside of the canopy of the tree. So that would really be a big deal, which was one of the reasons why with the other house that we were looking at, we wound up not buying, because it was going to be very limiting with what I could do. Let me show you one of the invasive problems on the property, because I noticed this and it's actually not good. I think we have a running bamboo problem. It's actually on the outskirts of our property, but it looks like they're coming in from a neighboring property. So over here I noticed some bamboo. Now these look like they were intentionally planted. Maybe they're clumping bamboo. They seem to look like they have a clumping habit. I'm still gonna take them out anyway because I don't want them here. But see this whole patch of dirt? Now it looks like they may have had a contractor or someone come in and just dig these out, and they just like left them here, which is fine, but they're still alive. I noticed some bamboo out in the woods, and there's a whole little forest back in there. So running bamboo is not good. And I know it seems like a really cool thing to plant, but don't, because it's very aggressively invasive. You can plant it there and it'll pop up like 80 feet away. It's just that aggressive. And so that clump, and that might not even be planted by the neighbor. It could have been planted by their neighbor or their neighbor or their neighbor, and it just keeps popping up. So really, really, really have to be careful with bamboo. It's very, very invasive, and I err on the side of not planting it. I have worked with clumping bamboo before, and I've had that in a pot, and that was fine. I'm just not into bamboo, and these are definitely coming out, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do with those. Interestingly enough, the tree expert was telling me that there's a local guy here that specializes in bamboo and can actually put something in the ground that's like a barrier to keep the roots from coming in, which I thought that was kind of cool. I'm definitely going to be exploring that. So in the formal garden, there are a bunch of plants too, some of which are a bit invasive. I believe it's Chinese silvergrass. I'll have to wait and see in the spring to see what it looks like when it's all green, but my suspicion is that's what it is. It is pretty invasive here in New Jersey. If you ever want to consult what's invasive in your area, you can consult your local cooperative extension, or just type in .edu in your search bar and just put in your query, and it should come back with some fact sheets from some really reliable cooperative extensions about invasive species in your area. But anyway, I think this is Chinese silvergrass, and it looks like it's really taking over. So we're gonna definitely have to deal with that in the spring. I do see a lot of Russian sage, which I love. There's a lot of boxwoods here. While the tree expert was here, he noticed there were quite a bit of honey locusts around, which is really pretty. And I did notice some honeysuckle that looks like it was recently planted. It doesn't look like it's a mature plant, but looks like it was recently planted. I'm not sure what variety is. I guess, again, I'm gonna have to wait and see. It's pretty shaded here though. I'm not sure how well it will do, which maybe that's why it's not all that big, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. A lot of what's here, you know, it's interesting to me because I want to know what's here so I can learn about what's here before I start gardening here. But I also want to know things that I need to deal with. For example, long term, there's a lot of barberries here, Japanese barberry. Now, that is a readily available plant at your local nursery, and so many people plant it on their property because it's deer resistant, it's pretty. But here, at least in New Jersey, it is invasive. It's an invasive plant. And, you know, oftentimes people are like, Japanese barberry, it's not invasive. It is invasive. And it's invasive because it produces these beautiful red berries, and I know they're beautiful. But the birds eat those berries, the birds carry the seed around, they drop the seed, and then the plant reproduces. And since it's a non-native plant, it starts to take over and chokes out our native species and other things in our natural environment, in our habitat, and it's just taking over. So there are other plants that you can plant aside from something like a Japanese barberry that you get the same effect without planting something invasive. So the short of it is, there's a lot here. There's a lot in a lot of gardens, and so it's going to take me some time to really deal with. But little by little, I'm going to remove the Japanese barberry as well. But what I really want to show you guys today and talk to you about is my new garden that is going to go around the pool. That's a train. I don't know if you can hear it. Let me flip the camera around and show you this garden and what I'm thinking. So you are looking at the future site of my cottage garden. Now, there's a pool on the other side of the fence, which I'll take you in there in a moment, but on the outside of the fence is all liriope. Now I do see, I think I see some Siberian irises in here. I see some roses in here. Those are actually gonna stay. I wanna see what they do. I don't know what they are, but you know, we'll just have to wait and see in spring. But this is all liriope, great ground cover. I'm sure it's beautiful, but there's just so much. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So we are gonna be taking all of this out, and I wanna do a garden, much like my former garden, my old house, that blooms from spring through fall. And it's gonna start, I mean, I don't have bulbs planted in here just yet, but I'll plant some bulbs in here next fall. Most likely I'll do a bunch of different daffodils because we do have a major deer problem here, and that's like the easiest thing to plant that deer will not bother. I have done tulips before with deer in mind and have kept them away using my deer repellents, but I don't really want to deal with it on the outside here. So I am going to just focus more probably on daffodils, but I would love to do allium bulbs. I want to put some bearded irises in here, definitely more roses. Those I know are a little more susceptible to deer. I'll spray those. I want to really think about bloom time and length of bloom time and color. I'm actually going to use my former garden as a guide and see what was blooming when and try to replicate the same here because I really love some of the things that I did there. So this is the pool. Obviously it's a little cold to be swimming, so it's not open right now, but it really has some good bones. I did notice it has some roses here already. I don't know what variety they are. We'll just have to wait and see. And when we saw the house, I know there's a couple hostas in here. They didn't look like they were doing so well, probably because it gets a little more sun than it should. There's some hydrangeas in here as well. I did see some Siberian iris over here and some spirea. I actually dug up and divided hellebore that I had that a friend gave me. I left a lot of it back at the old house, but I did want to take a piece of it with me because I love it so much. It's so pretty, isn't it? And there's just all this ground cover. We've got lots of plants in here. I did move some plume poppy over here. I moved some hydrangeas that I had propagated just to get them in the ground. They're not really gonna stay here. But what I'm thinking is this is gonna be where my dahlias are gonna grow. and I just ordered a bunch. I'm so excited. I got a lot of the same ones that I had last year and some new ones. I know I got Penn Hill watermelon, and I couldn't find Joey Winnie, or Joey. I did get a cafe au lait and a few others that are just going to be really pretty. I also ordered a bunch of zinnia seeds that I'm going to be starting indoors, as well as some larkspur, which I'm going to put outside the fence because I know the deer and the groundhog probably won't bother that. Got some sunflowers, some Mexican sunflowers, some calendula. It's going to be really exciting to see this garden come together. So I did mention earlier that I've heard we have bad groundhog problem here. I've noticed the former homeowners have done this chicken wire around the base, probably to keep them from getting in. It looks like they kind of stopped it though, this fencing. I'm not really sure why. We might have to put some back in there, but I'm gonna see how the inside of this garden works out with groundhogs. Last year, I had a huge problem with groundhogs. Under our shed, we had what I was referring to as the groundhog hotel, because one would move out because we relocated it, and then a few weeks another one came back in. We wound up putting chicken wire underneath the whole thing, and that really eradicated the problem for us. The reason why it was such a big problem is because I had planted all of these dahlias and it decimated them. So much so that my cafe au laits didn't bloom until like a week or two before the first frost this year. So it was really bad. But we're gonna have to test out this property. I don't really know what to expect here. I know there's a lot of deer, so I know I'm gonna be spraying for deer outside of fencing, and probably planting smart with things that deer, tend not to eat. Catmint is a good option. I saw there's quite a bit of catmint on the property, and I love how pretty that looks anyway. But, you're not going to want to put hostas and impatiens and things out in areas where they love unless you're taking care of them, because that is like a smorgasbord for deer. So when I plant this garden up, I'm going to be consulting Rutgers plant list rated by deer resistance. I found that to be a very effective Bible for me when I'm planting around deer. We kind of need one for groundhogs as well, I think, because the groundhog problem is such a problem, and I really haven't figured them out other than to keep them out of an area, which hopefully we will do in this area, because I've got big plans. I'm gonna give a little bit of time to see what pops out of the ground before I start just planting stuff and moving things around, but it's gonna be a fun year. And that's it, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Stacy from Bricks and Blooms. Enjoy a beautiful day.